Hello there. I'm gonna be doing another video. I kind of want to keep doing this just because I feel like it's good to practice speaking and practice, creating something, even if it's not like art. I think people are so hypercritical of what they create nowadays, and myself included. Partly due to, due to the internet and everything, we see it and we just think, well, what's the point? Like what I create's always crap. Um, but I wanted to just keep talking because I feel like it helps test me, it tests my ideas. I also feel like I don't want to do one of those crazy long video essays, as impressive as they are, and as the laudits people get from those they deserve. Um, I feel like I wanted to make a video talking to people in a similar position as me, which is you're in Gen Z, and this is kind of a worldwide phenomenon, especially in the Anglosphere, where there's complacency about adult life, especially with the cost of housing, the lack of return on investment in education, the general direction of the world. Um, Although I feel like there are reasons to be happy and optimistic and excited for the future, I think there's just plenty of bad noise coming from both sides of politics that deters people. Even though one's evil and the other's annoying. Although I get that both can kind of be just a reflection of the other. Um, but there's a lot for young people to be in dismay about. Um, a housing crisis as bad as the one in New Zealand or Ireland, and then I think Canada is probably up there, but then I guess in the second tier is probably the UK and Canada. I think America has definitely got it the best off right now, but it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse, and that eats up so much of your monthly allowance in terms of your salary or whatever money you have if you're a student, or if you're trying to get back into school, have a career change or trade school. Um, and I think one thing that really bothers, I mean, it bothers me, but with young people in general in the Anglosphere, like there's so many people who think I've got to get to London so that I can feel like my life is started, or I've got to get to Sydney, or I've got to get to New York, um, and it's so interesting because it seems like life would be the same no matter where you go. Where you'd be struggling for cash, life would be financially strained, and so people think, why not be somewhere where it's just a bit different? I guess to somebody who's raised in Sydney, yeah, Perth may be different, but they want something new, something that interests them. Same thing that even though a lot of people I know in New York would not dare live a day in LA, it just doesn't interest them as much as it would London. And a bunch of people in London probably wouldn't like to live in Manchester over the opportunity to live in Sydney or New York or LA or Miami. So I think that that's kind of where young people are. They're kind of just striving for anything new, and that gives them a metaphorical kick in the exploration. I don't know what I mean by that. Um, I'm not going to edit these videos as well. I feel like I just got to leave the mistakes in and roll with them. But yeah, it invigorates their exploration a bit, and we're exposed to each other's cultures over media or through our families. If you're more recent immigrants to somewhere, lots of Brits head down to Australia, or their parents or grandparents did, and lots of Irish still head over to Canada and the U.S. Um, and so some people go back to their ancestral homeland and stuff like that. And I feel like the core of what I'm getting at is this: no matter where you are in the world right now, housing is going to be bad. It's just going to be bad unless you're in the Midwest or you're in the middle of nowhere in Australia or you're in a cheaper, coastal city in the UK. It's going to be bad. That makes going to school harder. Um, that then, in effect, makes it harder to buy a home. And these problems will not get fixed anytime soon. I don't care where you are in the world; those are not getting fixed anytime soon. Okay, because even if home prices stay flat, and that's the best they can do, they just stay flat. They don't grow. it's going to take decades for wages to catch up with the cost of housing. And you need to accept that. It doesn't make life any easier. You're still going to have the same amount of cash at the end of each month after paying rent, but it does just give you peace of mind to come to acceptance with it. And if you think you're going to be happier in Australia, go. Give it a shot. If you can imagine yourself 30 years in the future and imagine you'd have regret if you didn't at least give it a try, even if you failed, if you feel like you'd have even the slightest bit of regret if you didn't try, go for it. And I feel that about Ireland. I want to try living in Ireland. It it's a culture that stayed alive in my family very well on this side of the pond, and it's hard to connect to people sometimes in the states. I can't really explain it. Um, I've only been over there once, but every time I meet somebody over here, there's just this sense of genuineness and authenticity and a common understanding that it blows my mind that I feel like I can't have that with my uh, the country of my birth and rearing. I can't get it off my mind. And so if you're like that as well, just go for it. And don't try to bog yourself down with the nitty gritty of how much it's going to cost, or the whole immigration thing around the world is just going to make things harder, especially for students. I know that it's around the migrant crisis, but most of us coming from first world countries, you're gonna have to do it by student visas, and that's not exactly easy if you're not upper class. It's gonna really test my bank if I study in Ireland, and if you study in America or the UK. I mean, you look at those international fees; they're nothing to balk at. Um, so that's annoying, but I just wanted to put this out there that you're not alone. The world is tough. The job market is tough. We're facing down a bunch of people, a shakeup in the job market. Additionally, beyond the job market being difficult as it is just due to tightening economic conditions or poor demographic conditions, there is the AI disrupting right now. Where I guess there's a rush for companies to increase efficiency and have less physical workers or adapt more AI-driven tools. Um, Look, it's nerve wracking, but I just want to remind people there has been worse that our parents and grandparents lived through. My dad growing up in the Cold War, basically the fear was that World War III could break out any moment. Not any moment, but very very high tension times. My grandfather volunteered in the Navy in World War II. He was in the reserves, but he volunteered and he was a pilot. Um, there it's one thing that bothers me that people always have this idea, like young people especially. How can you bring a kid into this world? There's theoretically never been a better time to bring a kid into the world. Into the world. Okay, medical science has never been at this level it is right now. The world has never been more peaceful, despite all the wars going on. Okay, it genuinely there has never been. It's like saying, "What's the point of life right now? The world's so crap." It's always been that way. Okay, there were world wars, there were famines, there was less science. People there, before the before 1840, the average human, or not the average human, half of humanity in the world did not live to see the age of 30. Okay, we didn't have the luxuries, the technological, the infrastructural luxuries we have today. Okay, and yet you're complacent in the luxury that you're born and adapted to. I I don't know. I'm getting a bit worked up, but exercise gratitude. You know, exercise gratitude to your relationships. That's what matters. If you're thinking, if you're like me, and you know that those relationships are what you will look back on and be the most proud of. It's like people with kids. I know people who became parents on accident and they realized it is the most rewarding thing in the world and they don't care about anything else. Try to look at your relationships that way. There's nothing more important than that at the end of the day, because no degree or anything like that is going to matter as much as your relationship with your community, your tribe, your kin, your clan, however you want to look at it. Nothing will matter more, and especially in a world where there's increased financial strain. Um, what else is there to care about? You know, except your happiness with where you are, your happiness with the people around you. Go out and live. Don't Don't keep looking at your phone and seeing how other people are doing it. Don't torture yourself like that. And even to a certain extent, don't watch TV like that. News can bog you down, but it's true. There are things in psychology called upward comparisons and downward comparisons. You look up and you see somebody who's very rich, living a lavish luxury life, and they have no problems, or at least it appears so. That can make us feel worse. Downward comparisons can make us feel better, as if looking at somebody in a worse scenario. Now, it's not ideal because it can build on an ego, but the issue is most people are too kind to ever make a downward comparison, yet they punish themselves by making upward comparisons all the time. And that's it's just going to make you feel worse. And I'll end this with a quote. Um, you know, if people are jealous of somebody around the world in a different country or, what have you, one should never be. This is from a Bob Dylan song, the Ballads of Frankie and Lee, Judas Priest. One should never be where one does not belong. So when you see your neighbor carrying something, help him with his load, and don't go mistaking paradise for that home across the road. Um, so if you're somewhere in the world and you think moving to another country is going to solve all your problems, look, it may make you very happy, but it might not. Or if you think having some type of house or job will make you solve all your problems, it might not. So just embrace gratitude, live presently, socialize for the love of God, socialize. That's such a good leveler for everybody nowadays. Have friends, you know, don't give up. That's my one rule. Don't give up. I don't care how hard it is. Don't give up. You don't get to quit. You know, quit a job if it's problematic. Stop a hobby if it doesn't make you happy or you don't enjoy it. Don't quit. Don't quit on yourself. Don't give up. I don't know. I feel like I kind of plopped around this video, but yeah. Thank you for listening. If you've listened this far, I hope you all have a great day and keep on living. Bye.